Welcome everyone to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We're delighted to have you here. And I'm delighted to be here myself with you. This is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It was founded in 1965 by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is known as the founder because he started the organization, and the Acharya. I don't know how much more I can handle around my neck. Acharya refers to one who teaches by example. And acharyas generally are noted for their adherence to the practice, showing by their personal lives how to perform this discipline of bhakti yoga. They also, by precept, generally writing literatures to show others the path of bhakti yoga, which is what we practice here. It's also known as devotional service. Everyone's rendering some kind of service, but this is very specifically service rendered to God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who we call Kṛṣṇa. So it's also known as the Har Krishna movement, and people who are in part of it are called Har Krishnas because they chant the names of God, which is a basic tenet of the practice of devotional service here at the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is that God and His name are transcendental and they are identical, and one can have communion with God, with the Supreme, by repeating the name of God. And there are many names of God. All of them have these potencies. Of these names, there's 3 that are in the mantra that we chant, Hare, which means, oh, the energy of the Lord. It's a declaration like, oh my God, oh my God. It's the O part. And it also refers to the female counterpart of the Supreme. That's a very esoteric aspect of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And Kṛṣṇa refers to the original person who's all attractive, from whom everything else emanates. And Rama, that's the only other word in the mantra, although they're combined in various ways, which I'll repeat in a moment. And Rama means the highest pleasure. Ramate yogano anante satyananda chidatmani iti Rama padena asu param brahma padiyate, that the highest pleasure comes from God. So when you say Rama, you're referring to that for which we're always looking, which is happiness. And the Har Krishna Mantra is recommended by the teachers who have passed down the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most recent incarnation or avatar of Krishna who appeared in the world to show by example how to practice bhakti yoga. And for reference, there are ancient literatures, the Vedas. Some of them are called Upanishads. You may have heard that word. And in the Kalisantarana Upanishad, the verse describing or naming the Hare Krishna Mantra, which goes like this: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Some people may say Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. But it doesn't matter, because if you keep saying it, you can't tell where it starts and where it ends. The point is, however, iti so Dāsa kam nam kali kalmashanashanam. There's a description, as I just mentioned, in the Kalisantarana Upanishad that names the mantra, and it says that one can, by chanting this mantra, overcome all the obstacles in this age of Kali Yuga. And that means that one can establish a spiritual practice in one's life. It's absolutely necessary for feeling any kind of balance or happiness in life. We can't just depend on the emolument of the body and mind to be happy or satisfied in this world. That's one of the basic premises of spiritual practice in general, that there's there's a hierarchy of needs that we have. We need a little shelter. We need some food, and which we'll give you everybody later. And we need to have a sense of ourselves. But most importantly, we need to know who we are and what makes us happy. So Krishna conscious movement is rather simple. It teaches the basic tenets of spiritual practice that anybody can do at home. And there are no prerequisites. You don't have to change your style. You don't have to wear anything different. You don't have to move anywhere. You can stay where you are. You can keep your job, unless you don't like it. And everything same. But if you add the chanting of Hare Krishna, then you'll find that there's a transformation that takes place in your life. And a friend of mine once compared it to the transformation that takes place in a big pot of milk when you add a little bit of yogurt. How many of you here have made yogurt before? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How do you make yogurt? And what is your good name? Madam, yes. Give her a microphone. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I want to hear how you make yogurt.
I just put I just put yogurt in the warm milk.
How much milk, how much yogurt? What's the ratio?
What's the ratio? I really don't know.
Well, okay, let's say the pot of milk is this big. Approximately how much yogurt do I need? This is the pot. It's a big pot.
So 1 liter of milk and 1...
No, this is the pot. It's milk. So let's say it's 5 gallons of milk. How much yogurt, approximately? My wife's going, don't harass her. Okay, go ahead. How much yogurt?
1 teaspoon.
Okay? Everyone's arguing now. All right. A little bit, right? That's all you need. Then she's going to tell the rest. Then what do you do next?
Just cover it with a...
You cover it?
Yeah.
Okay. And you put it out in the cold?
No.
You leave it in somewhere warm? Yeah. Medium temperature? Yes. When do you come back?
Just...
Next day?
Yeah.
Leading the witness. Okay. You come back next day, and what happens to the pot of milk?
Just yogurt.
It turns to yogurt. Yeah. Thank you very much. Give her a hand. If we can get your address later, we'll all come over to your house to see how the yogurt is over there. So in a similar way, my friend said, imagine your life to be the big pot of milk, and you just need a little yogurt to put inside. It's a culture, and it spreads throughout the whole pot of milk, and it transforms it. So there's a way in which, although we may feel overwhelmed by the circumstances of our life, and we may feel that it's hard to break into the practice of chanting Hare Krishna, if you start with what you can, a little bit at a time, you add it to your life, then you'll notice that it has an exponential growth effect that goes throughout your whole life eventually, and then you start to transform. And you can tell you're transforming, says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, when your attitude about life changes. Some of the ways that the chanting may affect us, says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, when he describes the preliminary awakening of our spiritual life, that we'll feel joyful. That's hard to do in this world, is to feel joyful. Mostly, said Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whom I referenced earlier as the avatar of Krishna who taught devotional service, we're getting some relief from distress, and then we take that as happiness. But real happiness is joy, and that's the nature of who we are, that we're joyful by nature. So we experience our own nature, an awakening of our spiritual identity, which is not so hard to do. We feel joyful, naturally joyful. And another symptom is that we're not so interested in collecting things, thinking that they'll make us happy. We keep whatever things we need, but we're not overextended in the way of collecting and trying to hold on to things in the world, because we see that I'm happy already. I just need what I need to stay alive. So I don't hanker after one thing after another. And then there's a way in which we feel more equitably disposed towards others. Towards others means other living beings, not just humans, but also animals, plants. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vidya vinaya sampane brahmane gavihastani shuni chaiva shvapakecha pandita samadarshana. That a wise person, the real pandit, is the one who sees with equal vision all living beings. No matter what their external feature is, the person who's awakening spiritually by chanting the mantra begins to see beyond the covering of the soul. And this body is a covering. We have a nose and eyes and so forth. These are robotic. We live in a biomechanical, robotic apparatus. We drive it around, and then we leave it and we go to another one. So while we're in this human body, we can develop these spiritual assets, especially by connecting to the vibration of the Har Krishna Mantra. So that's the basic teaching that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to impart to the world over 500 years ago. And the founder, Acharya, who I introduced to you, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, had brought that exact same teaching from his homeland, India, imparted to him by his teacher, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who had established a teaching method all over India to pass on this same method of bhakti yoga to tens of thousands of people. Our founder, Acharya, brought it to New York City. People had no context for it, so he had to build the context and also give the instruction and also develop some infrastructure so that people could come and congregate and practice it. There's a lot to the history of that. He came alone. He came with no funding, which is a neat trick, because nowadays it's hard to get into a country without funding. Somehow he slipped past all the normal filters. He did bring with him a book he had published. In fact, it was 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He had painstakingly translated it and gotten it printed in India, which is no easy task, because even getting paper back then was hard. And then he had shipped it over with him. They had loaded big tin trunks on the ship that he took over, which he got free passage on. Then he landed in Boston. And he only had one contact there, somebody he had met incidentally, who he had mentioned that, oh, I'm going to come to America, and maybe you can sponsor me. Sponsor means somebody writes a little paper that says, he's good for it, he can come. And the person who had said that just thought that it was a pleasantry and that he'd never show up, but he did. He showed up there in Boston and said, I'm here. And the family was named the Agarwals. The husband was from Agarwal's Gujarati? No? From North? From UP. And Upar Jange. So then there was, his wife was American. Her name was Sally Agarwal. And our founder had come from living 10 years in Vrindavan. How many here have been to Vrindavan? How many want to go to Vrindavan? How many want to go right now? Let's go. And it's a spiritual vortex, Vrindavan. So he had lived there for 10 years, and it was in preparation to come to the West because his teacher, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, had given him this task that, why don't you bring this knowledge that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave about devotional service and the practice that I'm describing summarily, and why don't you bring it to the West and teach it to other people so they can take advantage of it? So that was his mission, and he started off staying with this family for just a couple of weeks, and then he started to gain some interest. People invited him at a university to come and speak, and then he moved to New York, and for about a year he struggled. It was a very cold winter, one of the coldest winters on record, and he had no Gore-Tex boots. He had very simple, what we call sadhu shoes. They're very thin, kind of plastic shoes that he had worn in Vrindavan, where it's hot all the time. Well, not all the time, but most of the time. And he didn't have a big, thick jacket. He just had a simple shawl and so forth. Nonetheless, he stuck it out there in New York City, and he went around to various bookshops and offered the 3 volumes he had brought with him. And then he started to go to a park called Thompson Square Park, which is still there in New York City. In fact, the tree that he sat under and chanted for some time is still there and has a placard on it memorializing his starting the chanting of Har Krishna in the West there. So you can go there when you're in New York and see that tree. And one thing led to another, which is another way that spiritual life unfolds. We may not know exactly how it's going to unfold in our life, and it becomes an adventure for us. Life is life, our lives, and how they're going to unfold are unknown to us anyway, aren't they? Doesn't that hold for everyone, that we're quite unsure about how we got to where we are now? There's a confluence of circumstances beyond our control mostly. And then we're not sure where we're going next. We may have some plans, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go in the way we think they are. In some ways, our lives are enigmatic. Don't you agree? You have about 5 people agreed. It's mysterious. And however, I should say however, not and. However, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how the material world is a lower energy. And when we only interact with the material world and we don't get knowledge of the higher energy of the spiritual world, then we basically get the same things over and over again. It's just different packages, recycled. Same thing, same materials recycled. And one could say that our lives in the material world, although there's some idea of joy, happiness, and pleasure, we never quite get it, because it's not possible for us as souls who are highly refined. We're part of God. We're little sparks of God. That's who we are. The body itself is extremely gross compared to us. That's why the body seems a little gross. It's because it is. And that the expression, I don't know about if it's still around, but I remember in high school, or even before that, kids used to say, gross, when something seemed objectionable. And a lot of it would be the body. It is gross. And so's the whole material world. So good luck trying to enjoy some grossified energy. The real happiness comes from experiencing the touch of the divine, the spiritual energy. And if one then begins the practice of devotional service in this world, one can appreciate for oneself that real happiness comes from within one's own heart and from one's connection to service to Krishna. So in the teachings of the Bhagavatam, which is the book Srila Prabhupada brought with him, and which he continued to translate, there are a few important verses. Well, there are 18,000 important verses, but I'll talk about a couple of them just briefly. One of them mentions that when we forget who we are as spiritual beings, then we become fearful. So we think that we have something to lose. And what is that we think we have to lose? Ourselves. Because if I think of myself as my body, the body definitely changes, doesn't it? Have you noticed? It changes constantly. And then there's this, what we call the final change, which is a topic that is basically taboo, which is death. And this is the finality of the present body that I have right now. And this idea that I am this body and that there's going to be an end to it keeps me always in a sense of fearfulness, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose myself and there'll be an end to me and my endeavor to go on, which is natural because we are eternal souls. So the Bhagavatam says we're in a reversed position. Our normal condition is to be full of light, and that light comes from our source, Krishna, who's the supreme personality of Godhead. And when we're in touch with the supreme personality of Godhead, who's our origin, who's our support, who's our life itself, who maintains us, all we have to do is be aligned with him and be aware of him. And when we are, then that sense of fearfulness goes away. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Man mana bhava mad bhakto. His main instruction, and he says it twice in the Gita, is just think of me. This is real meditation, to think of Krishna. You don't have to do anything more than that. And the most practical way to think of Krishna, said Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and which is the main technique of the Har Krishna yoga system, is to chant the mantra. Because remember what I said? The mantra and Krishna are the same. So if you say the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then you're directly in touch with Krishna. And if you see Krishna, these are images of Krishna here in the temple. And because they're images of Krishna and we're worshiping them as Krishna, Krishna is directly present there. So if we see Krishna, or even a picture of Krishna, an authorized picture, then we're also seeing Krishna. So there are many ways to think of Krishna, but once we do, then that sense of dread, of fear, of darkness, it immediately goes away, because Krishna's like the sun. And if you may have noticed, sometimes at night, especially nowadays meaning this season, it's so dark, isn't it? It's ink dark. And slightly oppressive, isn't it? And we may notice on a moonless night in this darkness, maybe there's cloud cover over it and it's a little cold and it seems kind of spooky outside. You don't know where you're stepping, or you might hear a sound and you don't know where it is. When there's darkness, we tend to feel uneasy and even fearful. But in the morning when the sun comes up, it's beautiful. And you can see all the forms and the colors and so forth. So in this teaching from the Bhagavatam, which says that we're fearful because we think we're our material body, and our condition in this world, our position is that we've turned away from the light, who's Krishna. So what's the solution? Well, turn back around. It just seems so simple. It's too simple. It's not. It's natural when we turn back, when we turn our attention towards Krishna, then we'll naturally feel safe again. We'll feel safe. We'll feel that I'm not going to die, and that I'm being maintained at every moment. There's no sense of lack. There's no sense of incompleteness either when we're connected to our source. The verse goes on to say, therefore, practice this. Connect yourself to a source of knowledge in this world, the books like Bhagavad Gita. Find a teacher who can help to guide you based on Bhagavad Gita. Much like if you've ever been in a situation where you needed legal help. Has anybody been in that? I really want to know this one. I know you all been at Vrindavan. How many of you have ever needed legal counsel? It's not incriminating, and we're not going to tell anybody. Only a few devotees. Haven't you ever? Oh, well, anyway, I'm not going to badger you for that. There's a way in which, if you get in legal peril, it's a great relief to walk into an attorney's office, especially one that comes highly recommended, and they all have that library full of books. They're law books, and presumably they've studied them carefully, and they know their way around. And I did see a T-shirt one time when I was out and about that said, "A good lawyer knows the law, and a great lawyer knows the judge." And there's a similar feeling in the teachings of Krishna consciousness that if you find somebody who actually has a connection with Krishna already, they've been practicing, they're solidly connected, and they don't want anything else. And they've also studied the important books like the Bhagavad Gita, so they can quote you when you say, I have a problem, so tell me what it is. Well, I'm in this situation or that. What's causing it? It's like your association, because they'll quote you, for instance, from the Bhagavad Gita 14th chapter. They'll say, Karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that whatever good or bad situation we're in now is caused by our previous association, previous or present. You don't like what you're getting, then change your association. See, that's an example of the kind of guidance you might get. So the verse says, you can adjust your life. You're in fear, turn towards the light, turn towards Krishna. How do you do that? Chant Hare Krishna. And get yourself a little legal help. Somebody who can guide you and give you advice. How do I do that? How do I keep chanting Hare Krishna when my family doesn't like it, or whatever it may be? Somebody has some life experience in it. And then another verse. What's the second one? That's number 2? I wonder how that got so close. Another verse, which I'll just comment on briefly, says that the practice of devotional service is like something that we do every day. The comparison of the experience of practicing the tenets of bhakti yoga, spiritual practice, are very much like something we do every day. And I'm going to give you a clue. If you already know the answer, please don't say it. But what is this activity? What is something that we do every day, and sometimes twice a day, and most people 3 times a day? Yeah, you already knew it, so. You eat. Anybody here eat today? If not, don't worry, we're going to feed you later. But this is a really helpful comparison that this teaching from the Bhagavatam gives to explain how simple spiritual practice is. It says that when we eat food, we feel nourished, we feel satisfied, and our hunger gradually goes away. How does that sit with you? We've all experienced it, right? Were you hungry any time today, anybody? When? In the morning time. Did you have breakfast? And did your hunger go away? And did you know when you had enough? It's intuitive, right? So there's a way in which we get nourished, we get the sense of satisfaction, and our hunger goes away. Now, this is synonymous or analogous with the practice of devotional service, and that is when we actually have a spiritual connection, when we turn towards the light, then we'll feel satisfaction. That's hard to get in this world, because no matter what we get, when it's a material thing, it's never what we thought it was going to be. Have you ever had that? It's not as good as you thought? Or even if it is, or even if it's better, then you start worrying about it because you think you're going to lose it. Like, whatever the material object is. So satisfaction is hard to find in this world, but you can actually feel satisfaction. And the next thing is that you could start to perceive that the presence of the Supreme everywhere, within everything. You see everything in relationship to our source. And then finally, you have this way of not being as interested, and then it lessens, your interest lessens in the pursuit of happiness from the material world. For instance, there are lots of ways in which we may be enamored of the things in this world and positions we may attain and so forth. And we may become less enamored of those things as we practice devotional service because we already feel satisfied. We feel we don't need as much. Or even as we're using many things, we see them as items to engage in service, so we're not worried about them. We don't feel the same kind of an anxiety. For instance, anybody here have a lot of money? I'll take that as a yes. So, are you worried about it? Yeah, because, people are saying there's going to be a huge correction soon, right? Correction. And everyone's like, I don't want to lose half my portfolio overnight and feel that anxiety. And then everyone will tell you, don't worry about it, it'll come back in a few years. We don't know what's going to happen. And so there's this constant anxiety when you accumulate things in the world. And we don't have that when we have a sense that whatever I have, I'm a good steward of whatever I have. And it's not that I become reckless. I keep everything, but I see it, I'm engaging it in the service of God. And this is one of the main principles that causes us to feel free from the fetters of the world. That's very directly spoken in a verse from one of the Upanishads. It says that everything in the world belongs to God. That solves a lot of problems, doesn't it? And whatever we have, including our body, doesn't belong to us. And you might say, oh, but what do I have? Don't worry about it. You can't handle it anyway. You can't keep the things that you have, the money that you have, the body that you have. It's all going to diminish. So if you come to reality and understand it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to God, then what do I do with it? Use it in service. And whatever's been given to you as your quota, use that to stay stable in life. Stay healthy, be vivacious, but do it all for a higher purpose. And then you'll be happy. These are some of the basic tenets, philosophical tenets of the Krishna consciousness movement. It's very practical. And there are many different religious ideas in the world and practices, and they all have these basic elements that real happiness comes from either being moral or ethical or seeking higher ground spiritually, and that this world isn't our home. I mean, any religious process in the world will describe how this world is not our ultimate destination. It's good to know, right? And there are many spiritual practices, and this is the natural inclination of human beings, is to want to connect to our original source. So Krishna consciousness is a very simple process, but it has profound philosophical underpinnings. For instance, the Bhagavad Gita. It's unparalleled. You can read the Bhagavad Gita 108 times or 1,008 times, and each time you'll find something new, refreshing, and inspiring. It never gets old because it's spiritual. That's the nature of spiritual practice. So we recommend that if you'd like to be revived, then take up the basic tenets of the practices that were brought to the world. And that's why we have this establishment here. It's growing. We're branching out all over the Bay Area. We have places where people have more local gatherings in people's homes. We have a couple of places where we have cows that we maintain, where people can go out into nature, can go see and feed the cows who are, by the way, eating pumpkins at this time of year. Cows like pumpkins. And if you have milk from the cows during this time of year, you get the seasonal pumpkin spice, the ever popular. So let's see if you have any questions. Vaiśeṣika Das, that's all fine and good, but I've got a complaint or I've got a doubt. What's bugging you? Come on, open up. Thank you. Yes.
At the end, you mentioned that one should, since nothing belongs to me, I should use it in the service of Kṛṣṇa, and that one should do it vivaciously. How does one do that?
Well, vivacious, you should have vitality. Look up vivacious, see if that's a good word to use. It's got vi in it anyway, it means life. You should have life. So this is, I'm quoting generally from a verse from the Bhagavatam that says, Savai pum samparo dharmo yato bhaktira hoksaje ahetuki apritiyata yayatma suprasidati. To be satisfied, you need to have a direct spiritual practice. And also, what's the other verse I'm thinking of? That has the word... oh yeah, kamasya nendriya pratir labo jiveta yavata. Jiveta, jiv means to live or be vivacious, be alive. So in that sense, in the context of the Bhagavatam, kamasya nendriya pratir, don't worry about satisfying the senses so much. Do what you have to do to be healthy. You should be healthy. Krishna says it in the Bhagavad Gita, he used the word yukta. You should take care of yourself. Self means your body, your senses. Get enough sleep, but not too much. Eat right, and don't eat too much or too little. And he said, take time to recreate yourself on a regular basis. Stay healthy. Why? Kamasya nendriya pritir. Not so you can try to get more stuff and try to enjoy it, because it won't work. Flat out won't work. Never has, never will. But jiveta yasya. He says that just stay alive, be lively. Take care of yourself so that you have energy, so that you can go on practicing devotional service and inquiring, like what's my main purpose in life. Speaking of living, do we have enough air in here? It seems a little bit low on the air scale. Could we have requisite air for being lively? Shitsumon desu ka?
Hi, this. You mentioned how material life is unpredictable, and I was reflecting and understanding that, I don't even know what I'm going to do in the next week or next 2 weeks. But how is that different from spiritual life? Is it because we have a consistent japa, or do we also not know where spiritual life will take us?
Well, we generally know where anything will take us. We don't know all the details of it. And this is one of the points Kṛṣṇa makes in the Bhagavad Gita. He said, if you meditate on stone, your mind will become stone-like. Just like you might think, oh, I'm willing to live in a stone house. I love that stone house. And you may save up for it, and you might buy a stone house. But when you get in it, it's stone. How much can you enjoy a stone? I'm living with stone around me, and then your mind becomes absorbed stone-like. So Krishna says, Dhyayato vishayan pumsam sangasteshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama krodo bhajayate. He's describing a sequence of events that happens when we meditate on material things. So he says, Dhyayato means that you contemplate something. Contemplation is this very specific term. It means that you look at it thinking, I can own that. I can control it. That can be mine. Like when people sell things You go in get a hat. You ever bought a hat? Nobody wears hats anymore. You go in to buy a coat. Yes? And you go in to buy the coat, and the salesperson, you try it on. Oh, that's really you. that would you. Oh, and I think, oh, this coat. I have to have this coat or these shoes. Lots of people have shoes, and they get them home and think those. Ew. But there's a way in which we can look at the world, contemplate it, and then Krishna says, Jayato Vishayam Pumsam Sangasteshu Bhajayate. I make a connection with it. And that becomes part of me. Okay, that's my coat, or that's my car. This is my country. It's my sports team. How do you like it when your sports team loses? Don't you hate it? Do I need to name any big games to make you sad? When such and such beats so and so, and you're like, don't bring it up. Because we get so absorbed, we make a sangha with the material world and we think this is ours. So there's a general process, Krishna says, when we do that, that's our meditation. We forget ourselves and we go down into a dark space where we're ruled by our lower emotions. So we know the future when we meditate on matter. Now what about when you meditate on Krishna? So there's a way in which Krishna describes, if you go on doing this, just practice thinking of me, connecting with me through my name, what's your future going to be like? He gives a general description of that process. Mam chayo vyabhicharina. This is an airplane taking off. Mam chayo vyabhicharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuya yakalpate. Atita means to rise above something. What are you rising above? The material world. The whole morass of the material world is a big tangle of known events that's all been done before. It's all been done and more. And no one ever gets anywhere in this world except more misery, more attachment. But if you think of Krishna, what's your future? You're going to rise above the three modes of material nature. The details of what's going to happen, we have no idea, materially or spiritually. And therefore, we should acquaint ourselves with the difference. This is also an Upanishadic statement. Would you like to hear an Upanishadic statement?
Yes, sir.
You have to say it more enthusiastically, otherwise,
Yes.
I can't be convinced to say it. Anyad evahur sambhavad, anyadahur asambhavad. It's a simple statement, but it's so helpful to human beings walking around in this world. One result is obtained from thinking of Krishna, and a completely different result is obtained from thinking of the material world. And what that wonderful future will be in Krishna consciousness, we can't say exactly. It seems like a gamble, doesn't it? Yeah. So Prabhupada once said that gambling, he told us not to gamble. Any of his students, he said, don't gamble. And he said, promise you won't gamble. He said, I promise I'll never gamble. So he said, but there's a replacement for gambling. Because people who gamble, they get all excited about what's going to happen. Like they'll bet on a game and they can't stop looking at it. And we gamble when we surrender to Krishna. Or we say, that's a heavy word, surrender. But when we take our attention and we place it on Krishna and say, Krishna, I'm going to depend on you instead of on the circumstances of the material world and my own wherewithal to manipulate them. And when I'm able to do that, then it seems like a gamble. But it's the kind of gamble where there's never any loss and there's only gain. Whereas in the material world, whatever we gamble on, and everything we do here is a gamble, it's all loss and no gain. Because no matter what you get here, you're going to lose it. Krishna's a better bet. So we know the future, you're going to win if you meditate on Krishna. And we know the future, if you meditate on getting ahead of the material world, you're going to flat out lose. I don't care how far up you go, it's all going to come crashing down again. Okay, this is our call to action. Everyone please defragmentate. All of the computer scientists who know what that means, try to organize yourself so that there's more space for others. Apparently there are prizes for those who do a good job of this. Okay, we'll take one more question. So it better be good. Okay. Rāsika.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I was getting so excited that my question turned into the answer, but you already answered it while you were reading the third chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So my point was to ask, okay, Krishna recommends that we will turn out all the actions in the Daivi Sampad, which is transcendental gaining, and which we do every day, like chanting Hare Krishna Mantra. And my question was about how long in the life we have to do it every day. And automatically the one verse sparked my mind at where you were saying, it's nimitta nimitte na swadvarmena malatmaya tivrayamai bhaktyacha shruta samritya chiram. So we got to do it for the long time. And we're going to give up we do duties selflessly and hear and chant every day for the long time. So, and that I got excited to hear that already, that answer from you. So thank you very much.
If I understood you correctly, you're referring back to the reading we had recently of the third canto of the Bible.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And I'm just going to reframe it a little bit so everyone knows what Radhika Rāsika just said. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a dialogue. We were just in Vrindavan, and we held a open reading of the Bhagavatam for the month of Kartik. So during that reading, we read of a conversation between Devahuti and Kapiladev. It's a long story about who they are, but Devahuti is a highly elevated, saintly person, and she had a son who was announced in the Vedas as being one of the messengers of the process of devotional service. And his name is Kapila. And the way that the story turns is she recognizes his divinity and she asks him pertinent questions that are good for her and good for the world. She wants everyone to know the process of how to elevate oneself spiritually. So she asks him a lot of questions. And she says something that it's very relatable. When we read this section, many of the listeners related to it. And it is, she said, I'm frustrated. And she said, getting into spiritual practice seems difficult because I'm so ingrained in my habit patterns and I'm so convinced that I am my body and mind. It seems impossible to get out of this situation. And she said, how will I ever be freed from this connection to matter? Even if it makes sense intellectually, we may have a sense that I don't really want to suffer in the material world or be attached to trivial things. And from the context of this Bhagavad Gita, everything in the material world is trivial because it's here today and gone tomorrow. It's not worth investing in. It's worth using as in a transitional state. So she said, even though I know that, how do I apply it? Because I seem overwhelmed by the urges of the senses to go on doing what I've always done. Does that resonate with anybody besides me? 2 other people? 3 other people? I mean, what is it? So frustrating. So she said, how can I ever be assured that I'll get out of this? How will I ever rise above it? And her teacher, who was her son, gave her a very commonsensical answer, which is, I think, very helpful. He said, you had to do it for a long time. Does that help? And I was reading in another literature, this may also go with this idea, how determined must we be to fix our mind on God? And for instance, I mentioned chanting. There's different ways you can chant. One way is to have a congregational chanting, which we'll do in just a minute, I promise. And then there's another way you can chant privately. you can repeat the mantra, the Har Krishna Mantra, again and again and listen to it. And this is one of the ways in which you can have direct communion yourself. You don't have to go to a church. You don't have to go to a temple. How's that song go? You don't need no church house. You need no temple. You don't need no rosary bead. I can't remember how it goes exactly, but if somebody remembers, please let me know. You can go anywhere. Sit in your home, in your garden. You can be at work, and if you sincerely repeat the names of God and listen carefully, then you'll have this sense of direct communion with the divine, with Krishna. So one of the teachers from antiquity said, how focused should you be? You should imagine yourself going to the ocean with a kuśa straw. It's got a little flat area on it. And you could use that as a tool to empty the ocean, to drain the ocean. How long do you think it would take, Braja Rāsa Bhāvana, to use a little straw, one drop at a time, to drain the entire Pacific Ocean? A long time. And he said, be prepared for that if you want success. Approach the simple process with such focus and determination. I'm going to sit here with this one straw until I drain the whole ocean. Now, there's another story connected with this, and this is what the great teachers talk about. There was a little bird. She lived by the seashore, and she laid her eggs along the sandy beach. And one day, the ocean personified came, and in a mood of being mean, stole her eggs. With a sweep of his hand, a wave, he reached out and grabbed them and pulled them into his waters, and then chuckled as the little bird seemed distressed. Isn't that mean? Say yes. So then the little bird puffed out her chest and walked to the ocean. And even though she was such a tiny creature, she said, you give my eggs back. That's my offspring. My duty is to protect them. And the ocean says, good luck. You're not getting them back. A bully. So she said, I'll show you. And my mother used to say, never underestimate the power of I'll show you. So she sat there at the ocean and she began to peck out the water of the ocean. She said, I'm going to drain you one drop at a time. And what did the ocean said? Ha, 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 good luck. It'll never happen. And an audience started to gather around to watch her determination. And all the creatures who saw her trying to drain the ocean began to talk amongst themselves, and it spread from one forest to the next. All the birds were talking, and then the mongooses picked up on it. They live under the trees. They passed it on, and they started talking about it. And it spread so far that the very powerful, heroic bird, Garuda. We saw a license plate on the way here that said Garuda, so I thought I'd tell the story. Garuda heard about it. Garuda, he is the powerful carrier of Lord Vishnu. And he came down to see his sister bird. And he landed there and said, what's going on? He said, I'm going to drain this ocean. And he said to the ocean, you give the eggs back, or I'll dry you up myself with my wingspan. I'll flap so hard that the air will evaporate you now. And the ocean then became frightened because Garuda is not an ordinary bird, and gave the eggs back. That's a story the ancient teachers tell. And in a practice of chanting the mantra, if we approach it like that, willing to peck out every drop. And you can imagine it when you're chanting one mantra, Har Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Ram. And if you like, you can use beads. Normally they have 108 beads on each one. If you hold on to each one, you say, each bead is one drop. And I'll keep going till the whole ocean's drained. This is the idea of what Kapila Dev said. Be willing to do this for a long time. Not that I'll try it for a week. If it works, maybe. you have to get enough knowledge intervention in your mind to see material world's all risk, no gain. Spiritual life is all gain and no risk. But you have to be all in to be successful. So if you do that and you practice in that way, then very soon you'll get help that you never imagined you would get. And that's something Krishna says throughout the Bhagavad Gita. I'm there to help you. As soon as you show your determination, then I'll be there to intervene in your life and help you in ways that you could never imagine. So let's try chanting a little bit. We have the opportunity. We're all here together. Beautiful choir we have assembled here tonight. Who would like to be part of the choir? Come on, raise your hands. All you have to do is sing along. Raise your hands. Okay. So the way it works is, in this little concert hall we have, is we'll sing together the Har Krishna Mantra. And I volunteered to lead. I'll sing the mantra out loud. And then after I've completed one mantra, then you sing it back. Sound okay? Okay. I'm going to start with a few invocation prayers because I need to align myself to think and chant the mantra with devotion. So just close your eyes for a second. And notice that you participated in a purely spiritual activity. Whatever circumstances you're in now, in this temporary lifetime, they're all just passing by. And everything can be remedied. There's a medicinal quality to spiritual practice, a remedy called chikitsitam. We can overcome this feeling of dread, the fear, sense of disappointment we have by reconnecting with Krishna. And the most recommended way by great teachers for the ancient scriptures is to chant God's names. You can do it with your family, clapping your hands. You can do it by yourself, singing or repeating the name sincerely as a prayer. Whatever way you do it, you'll find that you instantly turn towards the light, and those dark shadows that are so scary begin to diminish and eventually are no longer there. And this is the main teaching of the Krishna conscious movement. It's simple, but it takes a little bit of determination to keep it going. And if you do, it's like a plane taking off. It gets more and more speed. You'll rise above the morass of desires that do us no good, bad habits, anger, greed, lust, and so forth, and we'll feel joyful and happy. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So now we have an upcoming dance party, the Hare Krishna dance party. Not many people dance unless it's for some sensual reason. There's artful dance, of course, some of it more high-minded than others. And then there's a different kind of dance as an expression of joy. As is mentioned in the ancient scripture called Brahma Samhita, that in a spiritual environment, people move out of joy. And when you move out of joy, it's more like dance than it is just clomping around. Because you have a sense of upliftment. Have you ever had that? You're so happy, joyful, that you just wanted to dance and sing, and someone, what got into you? Someone might say in your household, like, why is she so happy? Have you ever had that? Okay, 3 or 4 people. But that's what spiritual life is like. When we connect to Krishna, then the light comes on and the fear goes away. The anxieties of life, the anticipation, the dread, the habit of trying to take shelter of the impermanent, that goes away and we feel purposeful. We feel more useful and we feel naturally happy. And this results often in dance. And there's a trick to it also. If you don't feel like that, if you dance anyway, then you start to uplift. Starting to sound like Tony Robbins up here. But there's a way in which when you raise your hands in the air, put your hands up like this. This is one of the ways in the of Lord Chaitanya, how he taught to dance. And putting your hands in the air as you're singing the mantra. We'll try it one time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Yeah, it looked beautiful. Thank you. It's kind of a way of letting go of all our own sense of I'm the doer, I'm going to get things done, and just saying, Krishna, let me be your servant, and putting your hands up. We end up doing that anyway. Yes, please.
Oh, you single ones? Yeah.
Vijay has something.
Here's a 4-pack.
I know, but I...
It's Hansapriya. Hansapriya, we can hear you all the way over here, if you're still in India. Vijay, give him a microphone.
There's something that Prabhupada said about dancing in a Srimad Bhagavatam class. He said 3 things happen. You become free of the modes of material nature, you become light, and you develop your love for Krishna. When I heard that, I said, all right, I'm a dancer.
That's amazing. And it's one of the features of, or the practices of spiritual life that Lord Chaitanya engaged in and he taught others to do is to dance. And Prabhupada, in giving the instruction about dancing, once said that those who can't dance publicly, they feel restrained. At least in your heart you can dance. Feel free to let go and dance in your heart. So when the big hand turns to 12, which means it'll be 5 o'clock, we're going to start the Hare Krishna dance party. It will, for convenience, although it's not an absolute rule, wherever you feel comfortable, the men will be on that side, the women will be on this side. We'll have a partition down the middle. Just be aware there's some musicians sitting in the middle, so don't trample them, because they're sitting down playing harmonium and things like that. And then you'll see some devotees will pick up a rhythm of swaying, or you walking a few feet forward, a few feet back. If you'd like to join in with that, you can. Way over on that side, you're going to see some more dramatic kind of dancing. If you're more the athletic type and you'd like to join on that side. There are different pockets around that you can join. Or if you just feel like swaying, that's okay too. But this is part of the practice. And so to get ready for that, we'll have to put away all the seats we're sitting on, and there's a bin for them back there. We're going to have to roll up this rug. And I'm ending a little bit early because what I'd like to do is, once we get ready in the next few minutes, I think we'll first put everything away. I'd like you to take time, if you're up for it, to meet somebody here that you haven't met before. Think that's possible? Not all the combinations and permutations have been exhausted. And so if I catch you talking to a friend or a family member, you'll have to wait outside during the Hare Krishna dance party. So I want you to go out of your way, go out of your comfort zone, just to meet somebody and ask them what brought you here, why did you come, where are you from, that type of thing. And then we'll start at 5. So we got a few minutes to put away the asanas, and then really deliberately go and meet somebody, and then reconfigure for the Hare Krishna dance party. And thank you very much, everyone, for braving the freezing cold weather here in California and coming here today. Hare Krishna.